You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
This is Dawn on the Air. It's a look at today's news and social commentary from an eyes-wide-open perspective. It's up to us to ensure the issues of today are decided by us, not for us, because no one will give us liberty. We must claim it for ourselves. Hey, this is Don Weston. You know, the holidays are upon us, and with them often come a hectic schedule. Now, I can't be on tonight, but please enjoy this special Dawn on the Air flashback episode. It's a mix of this and that, from healthcare and our ism obsession to abortion, with maybe even a little faith sprinkled on top. Now, I'll return next week for my last episode of the year. It's a Dawn on the Air Christmas Spectacular! So don't miss it. December 11th at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on KLRNRadio.com, where liberty and reason still reign. But in the meantime, this is a Dawn on the Air flashback, 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 flashback. This is Dawn on the Air. Oh yeah, it's on now. I know what you're thinking. He's going to talk about elected officials and their health insurance takeover and how it's breaking the law. And you'd be right. There is a reference here. I'll get to it in a moment. Now, I'll admit, I honestly don't know a lot about this Graham Cassidy bill yet. Not the details, anyway. I've not had the opportunity to actually read the bill yet. I only know what others have speculated, and I get the general gist. I mean, it honestly sounds like an attempt to rein in the federal government and return power back to the states. It sounds flawed in places, you know, like every other plan, but still, it sounds like it might be a good start. I mean, now there are a couple of issues, you know, generally speaking, with dumping health insurance on the states. I mean, you know, we need to ensure that our state legislators and governors fully understand the details, you know, the specifics of the Constitution. Many of them don't. I mean, that responsibility falls on us, the voters. You know, we need to fully investigate our candidates and only elect the ones who not only understand the Constitution, what it is, why we need it, and what it means to protect it, but will actually uphold their oath to support and defend the Constitution. I can't say it enough. When someone's elected to a high office, you know, they swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And any time these folks propose, vote for, or otherwise create a law that infringes on the supreme law of the land, they violate their oath. Now, the states, you know, they would also need to have their own plans in place, which should be tailored to suit the preference of their individual citizenry. You know, they also need the money, you know, to afford it. Ideally, the government would take substantially less in taxes, you know, allowing the states to manage their own revenue based on a I don't know, a consumption tax that would fit the needs of each individual state. Now, again, no, I'm not fluent with all the details of this bill, but like I said, this could be a step in the right direction. And no, it's not perfect, but what we're doing is we're planting a seed of federalism, and it can be nurtured in the coming years. I mean, there isn't much that riles me up faster than an elected official who blatantly ignores their oath of office. I mean, it's become so commonplace over the decades that they don't even hide it anymore. I mean, that's the problem with the Affordable Care Act and just about every other health care plan there is. They're all illegal. It's illegal because it violates the Constitution of the United States. Article 6, Clause 2 declares the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, meaning no other law is greater. So when the Constitution limits a type of government to specific duties, like our federal government with Article 1, Section 8, and then that type of government ignores those limitations by doing whatever it wants, well, it's violating the supreme law of the land. In layman's terms, you're breaking the law. It took me a while to get there, but you're welcome, America. No, for real, though. I mean, let's look at it this way. All right? If I have a valid driver's license and I drive, then I'd be driving legally and everything would be fine. Now, if I allow that license to expire and I continue to drive, I'm doing something the law declares I am not allowed to do. I'm not overreaching the law. I'm breaking the law. Now, the same is true whether I drive in excess of the speed limit, claim ownership of something that doesn't belong to me, or even if I flat out punch someone in the face. These are all examples of actions I could take that would violate the law and be considered illegal. So then why is it that, when our politicians can break the law by violating the Constitution? They can't. It's illegal. In fact, this is the very definition of illegal. I mean, according to Merriam-Webster, illegal means not according to or authorized by law. Even the great and powerful Google defines illegal as contrary to or forbidden by law. Did you see that? Contrary to. Politicians are not granted special permission by the supreme law of the land to ignore the supreme law of the land. That means just like the rest of us, when they violate the law, they're doing something illegal. Now, in this regard, the authority of the federal government is limited to Article 1, Section 8. Nowhere in Article 1, Section 8, or anywhere else in the Constitution, for that matter, does it grant the federal government authority over health insurance. Nowhere. Now, this is important because the federal government has completely taken over our healthcare system through the manipulation of health insurance. The federal government is acting outside its legal authority. It is breaking the law. But, anyway, I mean, if we are, in fact, moving back toward a constitutionally based system, then we are truly in luck. An adherence to our constitutional federalism offers the most personalized freedom to the most people in this country. I mean, a state could be run by essentially any system the citizenry chose, from socialist and progressive to libertarian and conservative or anything in between. The only stipulations really would be that the states have to take care of themselves and they must adhere to the limits of the Constitution. Now, I know a lot of people claim, millions will be left out in the cold and states won't be able to take care of their citizens. And, I find that to be nonsense. I mean, those state legislators who ignore the plight of their citizenry won't remain state legislators for long. I mean, that's the power of the citizenry through the voting booth. States will be compelled to help. I mean, if not, the legislators can be replaced with folks who will address the needs of their citizens. Also, the overall success of a state is largely dependent upon the citizenry. If the citizens are doing poorly, then the state will do poorly. I mean, and no one wants their state to fail. State legislators will learn to compare the needs of their people against their own budgets and strike a balance that makes sense for them. I mean, that is a state's responsibility under the Constitution and is the state's duty to its citizenry. So yeah, the state certainly has a vested interest in helping their citizenry prosper. And you know Jimmy Kimmel, I mentioned him earlier. I mean, he had a list of alarmist grievances on his show last Wednesday, and among them was this notion that the states will let insurance companies run amok. I mean, Jimmy's forgetting one thing. The states are run by our citizens. It's the job of our citizenry to elect legislators who will uphold their oath to support and defend the Constitution. I know it's easier to want political parties to just run everything for us, but parties will always push toward their agenda. Always. That's why we must work toward educating our fellow citizenry. I mean, if a minority feels as though they're underrepresented by their state, then they need to know that there's a solution. They can rally their friends, their families, and their neighbors. They can get signatures and entry fees. I mean, you know, they can move people to go to the polls and vote them into office. You know, in this process, it's not limited to race or gender. Anyone with enough support can run for office. More of this special flashback edition of Don on the Air in just a moment.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
Having a place to go after school will make you a better student. Having an outlet to express yourself will make you a better artist. Having something to do together will make you a better family. At the Y, we're helping build better friends, listeners, writers, swimmers, scientists, and musicians, one chance at a time. Give the gift of opportunity. Support the Y at ymca.net. The Y, for a better us.
This is a Federalist Moment with Don Weston, brought to you by the Federalist Coalition. Populism is generally defined as support for the concern of ordinary people. Now that doesn't sound so bad, does it? What ordinary citizen doesn't want their needs to be taken seriously or given priority? Well, the problem stems from the fact that populism is a very broad and indistinct term. That's probably why populism can be accurately used by nearly anyone to spur a populace to action for almost any reason, so long as it opposes the elite. Haha, the elite, generally defined as a select group that is superior to the rest in terms of ability or quality. Yeah, just another subjective term used to categorize people based on personal preference. After all, one person's elite is another person's normalcy. And the people. More of a phrase than a term, really, but even more subjective than the other two. The people, in a political sense, describes the citizenry of a country, especially when considered in relation to those who govern them. Now, this phrase is so subjective that it never fails when, after an election, you have people from all sides claiming the people have spoken or were silenced, now regardless of who wins. Folks typically consider their side to be the people, regardless of any statistical or factual information. Now, to illustrate these points, here are a few examples of the more famous world leaders, nations, movements, or other political entities who use populism to stir a populace to action. They include Hugo Chavez, Hitler's Nazi Party, the Occupy movement, labor unions, the Tea Party movement, Ross Perot, Bernie Sanders, Donald J. Trump, and yes, even the alt-right and Antifa are all proper examples of populist movements. Essentially, anytime a politician or other political entity or movement pits the people against a system of elites, you have a populist movement. Now, as you can see, populist movements can appeal to nearly anyone, which is likely why populism is becoming the go-to phrase to symbolize the anti-elite. Unfortunately for the United States, populism, by its very definition, works in opposition to our Constitution. Surprising, I know. After all, the Constitution is a document written by the people, for the people. Well, one must remember that the Constitution may have been written by the people, but its purpose was to define a balance of power between our state and federal governments. Now, it was expected that ordinary citizens, the people, would be the ones to fill these various government positions. The laws that were set in place were designed to prevent or limit the creation of a ruling class or elite in the first place. It's only been the result of subsequent laws that ignore or circumvent the limits of the Constitution and historically pushed by political parties such as the Democrats and the Republicans that have empowered a ruling elite. You see, we don't need an abundance of subjective terms to help define the difference between the people and the ruling elite. We already have a solid, clearly defined term: federalism. The balance of power for our federalism is strictly defined by our Constitution. So rather than placing hopes or faith in a term that could mean different things to different people, we should enforce the system that's already in place. After all, when you're dealing with subjective terms, terms with definitions that can be influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions, no one can truly be free. Would you prefer to have your freedoms guaranteed by personal whim or the rule of law? Now you can discover more truths about federalism at thefederalistcoalition.org. You're listening to a Dawn on the Air flashback episode. Be sure to tune in December 11th at 10 p.m. Eastern for the Dawn on the Air Christmas Spectacular, right here on KLRNRadio.com. This is Dawn on the Air.
I can see her lying back in her satin dress in a room where you do what you don't confess. Sundown, you better take care if I find you've been creeping round my back stairs. Sundown, you better take care if I find you've been creeping round my back stairs.
So we've been discussing our federal government's health insurance takeover. Now, again, I have a lot of problems with it, but the biggest problem, of course, is that it's illegal. Now, none of our governments get to decide, what their duties are. And those duties, they're spelled out in plain old English, in the Constitution of the United States. And when we ignore the limitations of the Constitution, we invite the government to keep changing the laws to suit their goals. Their needs, not ours. The Constitution protects our needs. So when we allow the government to ignore the law, it's as if we sabotage ourselves. Welcome back to Dawn on the Air. Now that seems a little silly, doesn't it? I mean, it's like we intentionally poke holes in our own umbrella before heading out into the storm, or we cut all the seatbelts in our own vehicles before driving, or maybe even packing our parachutes with bowling balls, before jumping from an airplane. I mean, the same could be said for turning ourselves over to socialism. Now, I know that word's taken on new or rather a twisted meanings over the past few years. Folks are using populism to promote socialism to lead us toward communism. Now, I know that's a lot of isms coming at you fast, but we'll slow it down a moment. You see, I opened this segment with a Federalist moment about populism. Now, in case you missed it, populism, it's a catch-all term that's used to describe any political movement that pits the populace against a system of elites. Now, I mean, there's no ideology to populism, no set values or principles. I mean, the only requirement for populism is that one group struggle against some other group who are perceived as elite. Now, of course, the term elite is based on perspective, as is what populism stands for. So that's why populism is a dangerous label to cling to. I mean, throughout history, populism has not led to freedom for the citizenry. Most often, populism is used as a tool for control. I mean, when you couple this personal type of influence with a redistribution style of equality, you achieve socialism. Now, socialism is a system in which the government owns and administers the means of production and the distribution of goods. The government provides for all the citizenry's needs, and there's no personal property. Everything is communal. Now, this sounds very much like communism, and that's because socialism and communism are virtually the same thing. I mean, the difference is, socialism is the gateway to communism. In order to avoid violent takeover or a forced transition into communism, a government needs the will of the people behind it. This is why populism is such a useful tool. Populism is used to harness the discontent of the common man and tradition that into votes. And the people and policies, voted for ignore the Constitution and focus on instant gratification or perceived need. As a result, the populace surrenders its rights little by little, bit by bit. And the government, it needs us to surrender our own rights so they don't have to take our rights from us. And that's why they need us to submit to socialism. Once the government has been given complete control, it's a simple matter to maintain that control with force. Then you've become a communist government. A communist system is where all production of goods are state-owned, and a totalitarian centralized government controls the distribution of goods to the populace. Again, it's nearly identical to socialism, except at this point, the vote no longer matters. Once established, a communist system can be easily maintained through direct force. This is why adherence to our Constitution is vital to the continued existence of American liberty. Communism, socialism, these aren't boogeymen. They're neither conspiracy theory nor fairy tale. These are serious issues we're facing as various groups strive to shape the landscape of our political structure. The poor look at all the cool stuff the wealthy has, and they think, wow, man, they sure do have a lot of great stuff. I want great stuff, too. It's not fair that they have great stuff and I don't. And so they turn to the government for equality. Now, these people, they actually think equality will be the government giving them all the same stuff the wealthy has. That's just not how it works. The government will instead take everything from the wealthy and make everyone equally poor, using the remainder to fund itself. The only people who truly benefit is the leadership, the people who decide who get what allotment. Now, with eyes wide open, we have a Congress who routinely passes laws they themselves are not subject to. So what makes you think that these people would act any less selfishly if given total control over everything? You don't like me using those people as examples? Fine. Then use, a few of the socialist leaders out there. Not world leaders. The ones in our communities. Consider for a moment that these people want the government to take things away from some people and give them to others. How is that not selfish? How is that not seeking total control over everything? You think your motives are justified, and you feel as though your motives are justified, but in reality, you're just using an exaggerated version of the system you claim to despise. You're trading one master who has, at least some rules for a master who has no rules at all. It reminds me of Antifa, who claimed to be anti-fascist, but used fascist means to achieve their goals. Black Lives Matter. The core leadership, at least, want to dismantle local police forces and allow communities to self-police. Again, they want to trade a police force with at least some rules for another one with no rules at all. And they all claim to be pursuing populist goals. They are looking out for you. That's funny because they all want to abolish or control the Constitution. Well, the Constitution is your only protection against the government. So how is opposing the Constitution looking out for you? More of this special flashback edition of Don on the Air in just a moment.
There's always a moment of truth where I say, look, it's either put up or shut up. And it was time to put up. I had crossed that thin line. It was 100 plus degrees. We were hot. We were on fire. We were yelling our hearts out. You could feel the intensity rising. Even in our tiredness, even in our weakness, even in our pain, we continued to push. I told myself, you can suck up the pain for another mile and a half, and you will be a Marine. Not many people believe that I could do it. I don't know where I got the energy from. I don't know where the pain went to. But all I know is that I had what it took. I am a United States Marine.
PFC Darrell Willis serves his country as a Marine. Will you? Visit Marines.com or call 1-800-MARINES. The few, the proud, the Marines.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@KLRNradio.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
My name is Taylor Fisher, and this is the American Foundation. Federalist Number 62 by James Madison. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. When passed, the Affordable Care Act of 2009 was 2,300 pages long. The current Republican healthcare bill is only 46 pages long. Although much shorter, it is still dizzying to read and understand. Overall, no one actually knows the total number of federal laws on the books. I can't imagine the look on James Madison's face if he were to read these statistics. Our federal government was designed to be limited in power and slow to action. Although many Americans might think the feds are slow to act, they have certainly not been limited in their powers. It's high time Americans start remembering who is really in charge and hold their representatives accountable to the Constitution, which Mr. Madison worked so desperately hard to protect. This has been the American Foundation, brought to you by FederalistCoalition.org.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
You're listening to a Dawn on the Air flashback episode. Be sure to tune in December 11th at 10 p.m. Eastern for the Dawn on the Air Christmas Spectacular, right here on KLRNradio.com. This is Dawn on the Air.
Can't seem to face up to the facts. I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. Can't sleep 'cause my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Better run, 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 run away.
It looks like abortion hit the news again over the past month. I haven't neglected it. I've just been awaiting the inevitable outcome, which, we finally got last Wednesday when she was allowed to end the life of her fetus. You've probably heard about this illegal immigrant. Oh, pardon my political incorrectness. The undocumented teenager who happened to come here illegally. The one people have been calling Jane Doe. Now, I find hiding her name to be completely disingenuous. I do understand that she's a minor. She was also old enough to choose to end a life, so she's old enough to be accountable for it. Not that I think she should be personally tormented, but calling this apparently grown woman Jane Doe seems more like a political move. She's Jane Doe because she could be anyone. Yeah, that sort of propaganda. Sadly, that was far from the only propaganda being shuffled around. This was, yet again, another major distraction, and of course, most people fell for it. You see, the crux of the debate was that she's legally a minor. She crossed the border without a parent or guardian and has been living in a shelter since being detained. Minors typically aren't allowed to have abortions without a parent or guardian's consent, yet she obtained a judge's order allowing her to undergo the procedure. At this point, unless the government suddenly decided out of the blue to start supporting and defending the Constitution by tossing out Roe versus Wade, there wasn't anything else that could be done. No, instead, the Trump administration decided to violate the Constitution by insisting it doesn't apply to undocumented people who happen to come here illegally. Whew, that's a mouthful. Illegal immigrant used to be so much easier to say. Anyway, the government violated the Constitution, again, without penalty, I might add, by asserting the Constitution doesn't apply to undocumented persons who came here illegally. That's what the hubbub was about, and it's why it's a huge waste of time. What's sad to me is people have no problem asserting that the 14th Amendment grants undocumented people who happen to come here illegally constitutional rights. By my estimation, they're correct. The rub, however, is that the same argument applies to underdeveloped humans. Yeah, if I must call illegal immigrants undocumented persons who happen to come here illegally, you bet fetuses are just underdeveloped humans. And the fact is, the 14th Amendment protects them both for the exact same reason. A reason we'll get to here in just a moment. The real issue to me begins with the fact that this girl is 17. That's the legal age of consent in some states, including Texas. Personally, I'd prefer children wait until their brains have fully developed before being allowed to make life-altering decisions like when to have sex, but that's not up to me. The legal age of becoming an adult in Texas is 18. How can a child be sufficiently mature to grant consent to engage in sexual activity, yet not have the maturity to, sign a legal document? It's hard to reconcile. Creating and ending life comes before the privilege of voting? Yeah, you have to be 18 to legally vote, but you can legally have sex, create life, and even end life as early as 14. A person's brain doesn't finish developing until, 23 or so? How in the world does any of this make sense? Good grief. Now look, if you don't find abortion horrific, you need to see a few pictures or watch a video or two. An abundance of this imagery is what prompted me to block automatically viewing photos and videos on Twitter. And it certainly is a constitutional federalist issue. The 14th Amendment protects life. On the matter, it says, "Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Remember, life is a natural right. The controversy comes when people attempt to justify their desires to end life by redefining what life actually is. The controversy should be that this form of birth control was first industrialized in an effort to curtail the black, poor, and uneducated populations. Margaret Sanger, notorious founder of Planned Parenthood, opened clinics in impoverished neighborhoods in order to rid the world of children she considered born of ignorance or accident, in order to build a foundation for a new race. Those were her words, not mine. But remember, the 14th Amendment reinforces our natural right to life by declaring our government may not deprive any person of life without due process of law. It goes on to reinforce this idea by stating the government may not deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Okay, words, they have meaning, right? I mean, that's how spoken and written communication work. So let's look at a few words. People like to challenge the term person in the 14th Amendment. Okay, a person is defined as a human being. Okay, well, a human being is defined as a man, woman, or child of the species Homo sapiens. Okay, a child is defined as a young human below the age of puberty. Well, if you're a human and you've created life, then that life is defined as also being human, right? Human females, they don't become impregnated with dogs or cats or any other species, only humans. So pregnant women have humans growing inside of them. There's no limitation on the definition of person that it must be a fully developed human. It only says a human being. I mean, it feels like I'm being condescending when I have to explain all of this on such a basic level. That's an indication that, the arguments I'm countering are a bit of a reach. Technically, abortion shouldn't even be legal. There is no provision in the Constitution that allows for the government to approve the elimination of natural rights without due process of law. The Supreme Court, in all of its supreme wisdom, is not granted permission by the Constitution to ignore the Constitution. It really is that simple. And folks like Seth Rogen, they post ignorant messages about how absurd it is to think people would use abortion as birth control. Look, I may be for the legalization of marijuana, as in it's not the federal government's authority per Article 1, Section 8 to criminalize it in the first place. But bro, you gotta put the pipe down once in a while and take a look at the world with eyes wide open. Yes, there certainly are women who literally use abortion as birth control. It's not hyperbole to say so, it's simplifying. Now, an expanded explanation would be there are women who continuously engage in unprotected activity, become pregnant, have an abortion, then rinse and repeat. It happens. Granted, the women who use it as a form of birth control probably shouldn't be having kids in the first place, but abortions are not the way to go. Sterilization, perhaps. Hey, don't look at me that way. I warned you guys long ago. I have personal views and I have big picture views. While I most often express my big picture views, I never said I wouldn't slip in something on the side from time to time. I'm just saying, women who routinely have abortions obviously have no respect for life. But hey, keep in mind, we're talking about someone having the choice to end someone else's life. It's an uncomfortable subject that deserves uncomfortable discussion. I have a healthy respect for life. Now, we can pretend there are different benchmarks that must be met to qualify as a human life form, but they're all irrelevant justifications. You heard me right. You're justifying whatever level of, life ending you're comfortable with. It's not a life until it's born, some will say. Others, it must have a fully functioning brain. I think, therefore I is. It's nonsense. Some even go hardcore in the other direction. Life begins the instant that little swimmer breaks on through to the other side. Look, I don't know. I have my own level of comfortability, but, I tend to base mine on both science and faith. I like the heartbeat. Life requires a circulatory system, so without a heart, there can't be life. I believe from the moment of conception until that first heartbeat, there's a potential for life. But until that engine turns over, we're not quite there yet. Now, once the heart starts pumping blood, that's a different story. And for those who like to quote scripture, reconcile Leviticus 17:14. Because the life of every creature is its blood. I'm just saying, once again, life can be simple. We're the ones who make it difficult. Man, I tell you, I dislike how the Jane Doe story ended, but I'm thankful for the story. It serves as an excellent example of both sides manipulating the Constitution to serve their own agenda. I'm disgusted with everyone, to be quite honest. Republicans twisting the Constitution so it doesn't apply to immigrants, Democrats twisting the Constitution so it doesn't apply to underdeveloped humans, and the irony is, they both use the same passage to justify their side when in fact, that passage justifies them both. This is why we need to promote our constitutional federalism. People they just don't understand how it works. And it's a shame, because when the Constitution is allowed to work as intended, the true balance of power we need for this country to function, to truly support liberty, actually exists. When we deny the Constitution, we deny our own liberty. Again, it really is that simple. More of this special flashback edition of Dawn on the Air in just a moment.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
To get your free inventor's information, call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
As a mother, you don't want to have to worry about this bill is coming, but then she needs this chemo. That's a decision you shouldn't have to make.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
The treatment doesn't get any better than what you receive at St. Jude. It saved my life. It saved my daughter's life. It saved our family.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
You're listening to a Dawn on the Air flashback episode. Be sure to tune in December 11th at 10 p.m. Eastern for the Dawn on the Air Christmas Spectacular, right here on KLRNRadio.com. This is Dawn on the Air. Of course, you know, on November 5th, we had another church shooting. This one really ticked me off because, well, once again, this type of tragedy was perpetrated by someone with severe mental problems who simply slipped through the cracks of our mental health industry. And yeah, my thoughts and prayers do go out to the victims, their families, and everyone impacted by this horrific attack. I won't be bullied into silencing my faith. These people, you know, they're learning. The anti-Christian movement out there, I mean, usually they say, prayer doesn't help, and then time and again they're met with personal testaments that indicate the contrary. This time around, I'm hearing a lot of, prayers don't prevent massacres. And on this point, they're right. You see, the thing is, prayer is not a mechanism for preventing bad things from happening. That was never the point. Prayer is simply communication with God. It's an affirmation of faith, an empowering of the soul, an expression of love and reverence. When I pray, I do sometimes ask for things. And if it comes to pass, I thank God for His mercy. If not, I ask God for the strength to persevere. You know, I don't have expectations. I don't make demands. I don't blame, and I don't beg. I just talk with God. And there's power in prayer because there's power in belief. I believe in God and His impact in my life, so when I speak to Him, it's empowering for me. Now, that empowerment can take the form of comfort, confidence, encouragement, motivation. It just depends on what my needs are at the time. And sure, you might say that I'm just latching on to some focus that I use to distract myself from my problems, or that God serves as some sort of placebo where I've convinced myself that I feel something. I understand those perspectives because I was equally dismissive for much of my life. No, I'm not saying all of this because I expect to change anyone's mind. I'm saying it because I believe it. And if someone's missing a piece to their puzzle and just happens to discover it here, well, then it's worth discussing. You know, we're talking about faith and belief, and no one could convince me either was real. You know, I fell for a really long time before finally hitting bottom, before finally being stripped of my pride and my arrogance, and was humbled enough to accept that the world simply didn't revolve around me. Now, while no one could convince me, I mean, there were people out there who planted seeds along the way. And once I realized how lost I truly was, those seeds, they took root, and I began to look at the world in a new way. You know, what was once shadowy darkness began to brighten, and I could see the hope and the love in things that I never could before. It wasn't as if someone flipped a light switch or anything. Rather, I mean, it was the beginning of a journey. You know, and these revelations, they come over time and are often earned the hard way. Instead of looking at myself as a useless victim of circumstance, helpless in a brutal world without hope, instead of focusing on every negative influence that fed on my soul and my confidence for years, you know, instead of simply giving in to the world, I decided to rise above it. You know, it's not something you could just pay lip service to either. I mean, you can't just claim the label of Christian and expect to make an impact in your life. I mean, I think a lot of people give faith a passing glance or may even commit, but only on the surface. You know, they never really open up internally, which is where it really counts. Yeah, I just called Christianity a label, didn't I? Well, of course it is. I mean, it's a term that we use to describe those who follow the Christ. But you know, I have an aversion to labels. I mean, arbitrary labels anyway, the ones that can have the definitions changed out from under you. You know, I just grew tired of it. I mean, that's why I prefer to claim my independence rather than limit myself to a tribalized style of political thinking. You know, I used to feel that way about the term Christian. I was embarrassed by all the hypocrites out there. You know, I'd survived a difficult journey through my own private hell and back, you know, before I could accept Christ, and I felt as though I'd actually earned the title. You know, then it turns out that any jerk who'd just give you the finger as he cuts you off pulling out of the church parking lot could call himself a Christian? Well, what's the point in that? Well, of course, you know, now I see how hypocritical I was. I mean, look, I'm far from perfect, okay? I'm just a sinner, just like everyone else. And the thing is, you know, while being a Christian means striving for a Christ-like life, none among us will ever be perfect. We're simply not meant to be perfect. God uses imperfect people to pass along faith. Our imperfection highlights the perfection that is God. It's His story of unconditional love that guides us. I mean, that's why He's God. His perfection is the example we, in our imperfection, strive for. That's why I refer to a Christian life as a journey. You know, these days when I feel the need to criticize the extent of someone else's faith, I have to remember that we're all on the same journey. You know, we're just at different places along the way. For everything I think I know, there's an unfathomable amount that I really have no clue even exists. So I may feel as though I'm far along my journey, but in the grand scheme of things, maybe I'm just getting started. I mean, that's why I try not to ever question someone else's faith. Now, I'll criticize me some actions. Oh, believe I'll judge the crap out of you for doing something I think is stupid, but I can't question the sincerity of your faith. I lack both the insight and the authority. I could no more judge the weight on someone else's soul than I could track my own ledger, and I have intimate knowledge of myself. As mortals, it's simply not our job. We are all imperfect beings at different places along the same journey. All we can really do is choose to offer to help those struggling more than we are. You know, we can live our lives with confidence in our faith and love and lead by example. Years ago, back when I was living paycheck to paycheck, I had to decide between breakfast or lunch because I couldn't afford both. And that day I decided on breakfast so I could at least start my day well. And it just so happened that this was the day some random person decided to pay for the order for the guy behind him. Now, I was the recipient of that generosity. And it was a simple gesture that was uplifting, and it truly impacted my life, even till this day, because here I am talking about it. And that was just a small thing. Now consider a service member struggling with PTSD, trapped in this mindset of being forgotten and alone. Maybe today is the day that they decided that maybe he just ended all. Well, then he's stopped outside of a store by a child who shakes his hand and thanks him for his service. Maybe then that service member realizes, maybe he's not alone. Maybe he's not forgotten. And maybe the world isn't as dark as he thought. You see, we don't know. That's why we call it faith. Now, I do have a minute or so longer, and as an aside, along with my love of faith, you may be interested to know that I have a healthy respect for science. I believe science is man's way of explaining the wonder of God's creation. Why couldn't the Big Bang Theory explain God's design? It is possible, isn't it? Genesis describes creation as happening over a period of days. Well, I'm not sure anyone still believes those days are by man's reckoning, as in a 24-hour cycle. I always took it to mean like a unit of measurement that was described as a day because, well, that's how Moses could comprehend it. Who's to say it didn't take 100 million years or a split second? A snap of the fingers. Bang! Creation. And evolution. Why not? It makes sense, right? So God created man in his image. That's the only description we get. Science claims the hominid lineage appeared some 6 million years ago. Now let's say, for simplicity's sake, that it's true. Because let's face it, who really knows? But now, if it is true, who's to say that one day, in the beginning of Genesis, wasn't 1 million years? After all, if man was created on the sixth day, and the hominids appeared 6 million years ago. You see, that's why I say science, it's just a way for mankind to wrap its feeble mind around the wonder that is God's creation. More of this special flashback edition of Dawn on the Air in just a moment.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
This is Dawn on the Air, and my buddies Anthrax there are reminding me that I've ranted myself slap out of time. I don't have a mechanism yet for taking calls, but still, folks have been sending me comments. And you can too. Tweet them to me at Dawn on the Air. I'll definitely notice if you use the hashtag DawnOTA. And you can also email me at dawnontheair@klrnradio.com. I think sometime in the near future I'll reserve some time to address some of your feedback directly. In the meantime, stay tuned to KLRN Radio for our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson with America Off the Rails. Also, be sure to check out The Outer Limits, Sundays at 9 Eastern. It's music and sci-fi and comics and basically cult classic culture at its finest. And host Steve Long blends it all together very well. Now, as for me, I'll see you here next Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Or, in between, thanks to being able to stream the show any time from KLRNradio.com. But in between times, let me leave you with this little anecdote. I once had a girlfriend, and we were going through some stuff. We said some mean things to one another, and then later, I wanted to apologize, but I just couldn't face her. So I sent a friend of mine to go talk with her for me, to help her understand how I knew I was wrong and how sorry I was. I didn't see him for a while, and so I decided to go check on him about 20 minutes later, and of course, they were hooking up. It's what I think about every time I consider sending off another career politician to change the government for me. Take it for what you will.